Classification systems were created by people. The most the most prevalent classification system in the United States was created by the Library of Congress using the Library of Congress and its subject headings. Over 60 years ago, this classification system, especially when it deals with humanity, is full of biases. When we look at domination, which groups are not categorized negatively in algorithms. Noble points out that for the 60s and for many years, the N word, the yellow peril, and certain negative connotations for Jewish Americans and other non-people of color were used as a classification tool. With that tool, you have a system that's been taught for over 60 years. And when you get to search engines like Google, Yahoo, Bing, those search engines use this classification system because othering becomes the model. Now, what we do understand as we look at the classification of people in particular is those who have power to design systems of classification or technical hold the ability to prioritize mechanical schemes, and there is going to be a privilege, whether they recognize that bias or not. For example, Noble points out that we talked about Oriental instead of Asian. We talk about Christianity is in the hierarchy of classification. Hierarchy becomes the top. Classification is moving downward toward primitivism when we start talking about classification schemes. And they are developed by the most powerful in our discourses in society with the idea to appeal to those least likely, least influential in using them or have access to them. We continue to look at when she talks about and you continue to look at Google and other situations, search engines follow the similar categorization patterns and practices. And we can see it in a lot of the questions asked. When questioned is a matter of freedom of speech, Google goes against that, as does Yahoo and some others, because they say everyone has a right. The question or naming controls are central to making something or making knowledge discoverable. There is a need for a public search engine alternatives united with public interest in journalism and the librarianship that ensures these things. 3, the educational impact becomes that educators must be aware of not only obvious biases when having learners do research, they should be able to identify unreliable sources as well as legitimate sources that they use on a continuing basis in their educational endeavors. In 2010, the FCC put forward a plan for high-speed internet as the common medium, and this is Chapter 6. And two-thirds of its users two-thirds of the users at that time spend most of their time online communicating information and doing information searches, as well as for entertainment. But there was no mention of search engines or the quality of information that people are finding. And often we just find garbage on the internet, and you have to search out for real information. Along with the unregulated and deregulation of commercially driven internet, we're talking about the gamification and that gamification of news headlines. Here we have, when you look at MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, 3 of the major cable news networks, we see that Trump, according to Talberg, become the main driver. This is what pushes headlines. We see the headline that talks about breaking news on a constant basis. These things influence how we see and what happens in our media, and also influence public opinion. Rather than quality of journalism or quality news articles, we are inundated daily in these algorithms which showcase misrepresentations of minorities and angling for what's going to garner the quick headline. Now, the FCC and the Federal Trade Commission have been reluctant to regulate the internet environment, with the exception or accepting children's content, which has been a good thing, and you can still continue to see those drives since 2007. Now, attempts to regulate decency, which means talking about homophobic, racist, and sexist slurs, remarks, images, and etc., they don't address it because it continues to fall under free speech. Here lately, over the last 5 to 10 months, maybe the last couple of years, you start to have a bigger conversation around racist slurs, and you see people actually taking matters into their own hands in terms of people making comments and sharing that information, making lives difficult for those people who choose to record and share those things. Data contributes to the marginalization of minority communities as well, because in one example, it eliminates bad schools in most real estate searches, limiting the searches to all white or good neighborhoods, or limiting those searches for good neighborhoods, which continues the segregation patterns, particularly in urban areas. The impact on education. Students will need to be shown how to analyze media articles for biases and create a deeper understanding of the motives of the presenter. That means when you watch a news article, they need to start doing they should be able to do calculations within their own memory or mind that help them understand what is going on and what is the point of view of the author of the article and why. The other focus is on how artificial intelligence is impacting our students as well as and the neighborhood choice, because we have algorithms making these decisions for us. The pushback, we educators are going to have to push back against the narrative of colorblindness. In order, because the internet provides us with the idea that this is all equal, and colorblindness does not afford that. The internet algorithms promote this, which can be in and of itself another series of issues. Thank you. This was my book. This is Algorithms of Change by Noble, and chapters 5 and 6.